Good evening, everybody. This is Mr. Abdul Wahab Jamal. Today we are going to have a new session of English language. We are dealing with the last session of the grandmother song story. It's a traditional story or folktale story. It's a Mexican traditional story or traditional tale. Today is the last session, which is 2.4, Climbing the Mountains Alone. We are talking about the granddaughters, if you remember, who became braver, who became stronger, who became independent after she was fragile, after she was weak, after she was afraid, after she was dependent. The learning objectives of today's session, we are going to identify and explore the effect of explicit and implicit information. We will discuss views on the ending of a story. We are going to consider how different cultural beliefs affect how the reader reacts to stories, and we will express a personal response to a story. In order to get started, I want to introduce or define some keywords, definitions if you wish to say. Okay? So, explicit meanings from the word ex, which means outside. Explicit, the information that the writer clearly states and you can recognize or notice directly from the outside. You can say it is a little bit literal or they are obvious. It is easy to find in the text. To say, for example, it was cold, it was hot, the granddaughter was weak, the grandmother was strong. This is explicit. I'm directing the information or I'm exposing the information clearly and directly. Implicit information, however, it is indirect way to say something. The information that the writer suggests, but you need to figure out for yourself. Usually, it is not stated directly and it is used figuratively. Okay? So say for example, she has a deep root to the earth. Okay? To show, don't tell, if you wish to say. Cultural beliefs or traditions. These are the ideas, values, and the traditions that are important to a particular group of people, like Mexicans, Egyptians, or society, and they can affect how people think and react to things like stories. So, I have a story which is related to the group of people, Mexican people. So, this story, for example, is trying to deal with the cultural beliefs of Mexican people, of Egyptian people, of German people, and so on. That's the meaning of cultural belief. The ideas or the values which certain type or group of people do believe or react to. Let's talk about the cultural beliefs and their impact in general. Because as you remember, Grandmother's Song, it has deep feelings of love, loss, and connection themes. And the story, if you remember, it is a connection or a relationship between granddaughters and the grandmother, and how they support each other through life, and how this familial bond remains forever, let's say. Cultural beliefs influence how people react to stories. Example, different cultures different cultures may view death in different way. Death is only the beginning. We have something called afterlife. So while others may see it as the end of everything, we have other people who can see it's only a port or a start to a new life. We have people who believe that the spirit is there. In this story, we are examining or seeing that the values or traditions under the word song, if you wish to say, the song is transmitting between grandmother into granddaughter, and from the granddaughter into the granddaughter, and so on. So this heritage, this inherited song or values or traditions, you have to understand that they are piece of culture, traditions. So grandmother's song, for example, you might have different thoughts and feelings depending on your own beliefs and traditions. However, this is literature, and you have to read, understand, and accept or criticize all types of literature. Let's read the text with each other. Let's listen very carefully. Extract 7.
Extract 7. In time, grandmother grew old and more frail, so granddaughter attended to her, coming at dawn to light the fire and to boil water for tea. She cooked for her, and she washed and brushed her fine silver hair. She massaged her well-worn feet, gently rubbing every single toe. She took grandmother's loving hands in hers and massaged her old, stiff fingers. Sometimes, but now less frequently, they walked together across the village, through the valley, into the mountains, laughing and singing together. And wherever the ground was uneven, granddaughter offered grandmother her arm. One night, in a dream, granddaughter saw grandmother walking up the mountains alone. She wanted to walk with her, but grandmother turned and raised her hand. I have to go on alone, she said, with a quiet smile in her eyes. The next morning, granddaughter went to grandmother's house as usual, but when she went to wake her, grandmother's body was cold and her face free from worry. Granddaughter dropped to her knees. Grief struck as quickly and precisely as lightning. She felt her heart flutter and her stomach churn, just as they had when she was a child. She trembled from head to toe, like cedar branches in a raging storm. How could she live without her beloved grandmother? Her heart opened like a river, and tears soaked her face and spilled onto her chest. She doubled over in despair, and sobs welled up from her belly and her bones.
So sorry to hear that the grandmother has passed away. So that extract put an end to the physical life of the grandmother. And we have turned in uh, responsibilities, let's say. Now the grandmother is very old, while the granddaughter becomes adult and strong enough to help the grandmother. So now we have a turn in roles. Grandmother is old enough, and the granddaughter is the one who is coming to take care of the granddaughter, to the grandmother, sorry. So look at the silver hair of the grandmother. Okay, she's old, and the granddaughter massage her well, and she comes at dawn to do the fire and boil the water tea. Look at the routine, the daily routine. Okay, and sometimes they walk with each other across the village, and she is helping her. She is giving her an aid, her arm, because she is old, and she needs support. Now, in the dream, the granddaughter saw that the grandmother is walking alone in the mountains or to the mountains, saying that I had to go alone. That's, of course, a connotation to death. Okay? That's hint, a foreshadow in the story to tell you that the grandmother is going to die. She is walking the journey of death alone, and she is going into the mountains, okay, up to the sky, high. The next morning, of course, the dream comes true. She went to the grandmother's house as usual and she found her dead, okay, cold and her face free from worry. She is brave and she has no problem at all. She is dead now. Granddaughter, of course, now we have a change of character. Uh, we have character development now. Because now, if you remember, we have the same granddaughter who was weak, fragile. She doesn't know what to do. She remembered herself when she was in extract 1 and extract 2. She couldn't do anything. She was trembling. Her stomach hurts. Okay? She was in ache. She was in deep sad. And look at the connotations or the image. Like cedar branches, raging storm. Like an open river. Can you see the connotation to the nature? Okay? And look at the despair subswelled up from her belly into her bones. So she has a very critical or bad situation because she is fragile and she uh, lost her granddaughter. Okay, let's go now and examine the text, analyze it. Give me now some ideas about the actions and the links to the earlier part of the story. What does the granddaughter do for the grandmother? The granddaughter lights the fire and boils water for tea upon the dawn. And that shows, of course, her care and daily routine of looking after the grandmother. Another action, the granddaughter cooks for her grandmother and she brushes her silver hair. And that shows, of course, devotion to the grandmother, and she showed love and attention. The granddaughter massages her, the grandmother's feet, fingers, and these actions, of course, reflect the close bond, and the grandmother's age. In the end, we have they walk together through the village, and that shows, of course, long-lasting connection of a friendship and loving for nature. They like to do this action with each other. Now, some imagery. Writers use many images of nature. Tell me the image of the grandmother climbing the mountains. What does it symbolize alone? And give me 3 other images of nature or from nature that shows the granddaughter's grief. And why do you think the writer used this connotation or image to describe grief and the relation to the nature? What do they create for the reader? That's very easy, okay? The image of the granddaughter climbing the mountains alone symbolizes the journey through life and death. And it suggests that she is ready to face the end of her body or her life by herself and with peace and strength, not with sickness or frighting. Now, 3 images of nature showing the granddaughter grief. Remember that we have a grief struck as quickly and precisely as lightning. Lightning can be seen in nature. It is very strong and you cannot stop it. She felt her heart flutter and her stomach churn, and her heart was open river, open river. Okay, it's another nature image. She trembled from head to toe like cedar branch in raging storm. Cedar branch in raging storm is a good image to show the connotation between the reader, between the writer or the narrator and the nation. Remember that imagery, it is to describe something using your five senses, your sensory details, to help the reader imagining the image. So image, it is to use your five senses into description, to use the sight, to use the sound, to use the smell, to use the touch, all of these, of course, the taste, all of these is to paint an image or to create a picture in the readers of them, in the minds of the reader, to understand the scene well. Why do you think the writer used these images? Of course, the images are to show the relationship between the characters and the nature. From nature we came, and to nature we go back, we belong. So the writer uses these nature images to show that intensity of the granddaughter's grief. She has free heart and she has true grief, and it is related to the nature. Lightning storms, churning rivers represents strong and uncontrollable emotions that the granddaughter feels after her grandmother's death. That's very important. They are not artificial, they are natural. That will help the reader to feel the emotions or the emotional impact of the loss. Let's read now extract 8.
Extract 8. My little one. Grandmother's voice filled the room. My little one, listen well. Granddaughter felt strong, warm hands tenderly stroking her back. These invisible hands felt more immense than grandmother's earthly hands. They stroked well-being into her from her head to her toes, up her front and down her back. She felt the hands pick her up and cradle her and rock her back and forth, as if she were an infant. And granddaughter felt warmth entering her heart, her belly and her bones. Just as suddenly as her sobbing had begun, it ceased. She felt a lightness in her heart and strength in her limbs. She was standing on her feet now, stroking the cheeks and the forehead of her dear dead grandmother. Granddaughter has become a grandmother many times now. She has taken her children and her grandchildren across her own broad lap. She has cradled them with her strong, skillful arms. She has laughed and cried with them. She has sung to them, and she has stroked them, whispering, My little ones, listen well. Grandmother's spirit is all around us. She is in the wind and in the trees. She is in the valleys and the hills. She is always there when we are with warm friends, when we taste delicious food, and whenever there is carefree laughter or salty tears are shed. No matter where we are, grandmother is never far away, and whenever we need her, we can simply shut our eyes and feel her holding us so very close.
Very nice, and that's the end of the story. Now the grandmother is dead, the granddaughter is very weak and fragile, but suddenly she felt the spirit of the grandmother in the room, and her, let's say, afterlife spiritual hands, the grandmother's hands, they are very big and immense. Now they are holding the granddaughter, and now she becomes strong again. And the song of the grandmother, the sound of the grandmother, the voice of the grandmother, the spirit of the grandmother, okay, uh, giving warmth and strong to the granddaughter. Now the granddaughter is on her feet again, and now the granddaughter can transmit and transcend the song which she took from the grandmother into her granddaughter, because the granddaughter now is old enough and she has her own granddaughter. She is a mother herself, she is a grandmother now, and she started to say the same thing. She is now reacting into the same method, and she is singing the same song which she learned from her grandmother. And she is teaching the children or the granddaughters that the grandmother is here, the spirit of her is around all of us, and whenever you want to remember her, just close the eyes and you will feel her holding us so very close. They do believe in spirits or in these traditions or values. People are not dead only physically, but the spiritual, the spirit, the song will remain there. It's a traditional Mexican story, as we said. Let's analyze the text with each other. Extract 8. The question is, views on the ending of the story. The ending of the story can be both sad and uplifting. Sad as we forget, as we lost the grandmother. She died. Okay? We are very upset. We are very angry. We are very sad. Grief is hard to cope with. While another point of view saying that no, the end is not sad. The end is very promising and she is uplifting. It's uplifting. It is positive. It is optimistic. It has lots of hope. And it shared or contributed how to build yourself, how to support your soul, how to live and move forward after you lose someone who is very dear to you. So the granddaughter learns that the memory and the spirit of her grandmother will live on forever. So, two points of view about the ending. One could be sad, the other is optimistic. What do you think about the ending? Is it sad or is it optimistic? I do feel both, to be honest. Okay, both endings. That's what we call argumentative writing, or to have a balanced point of view. We explain this. We are going now to have a practice or a listening activity about a Mexican person called Miguel. Miguel that Miguel is a British citizen, but he has a Mexican root, and he is now talking about himself. It's a connection to the real world. So the story is a folk tale or traditional Mexican tale, and now they are bringing an activity which make a link, okay, to the real world, to the Mexican world. So you will hear now Miguel or Miguel in true life. okay, to give us something true, not fiction, about Mexico or Mexican people. Let's listen with each other to that track.
Hi, my name is Miguel. I was born in Mexico, but I was brought up in the United Kingdom. I'm very proud of my Mexican roots, and I think a lot of my beliefs and some of my family traditions are the result of Mexican influence. I've visited Mexico many times and have recently been studying the architecture, customs, and culture of my home nation and thought I'd share them with you. Mexican people are a mix of Spanish and North American backgrounds. You can see that in the architecture. The style of the buildings and monuments shows the influence of Spain. For me, the most beautiful building in Mexico is the Zacatecas Cathedral. It was built in 1729, and every time I look at it, it takes my breath away. Mexicans are very proud of their customs and celebrate key historical dates, such as the 16th of September, when the country became independent from Spain. On that date, people decorate buildings with flowers and play sports games, have parades and firework displays. Most Mexicans would say the 12th of December is the most important day, though. It's Guadalupe Day, which is a time when the whole country spends time celebrating the nation's culture. I'm really proud of my home country's music traditions. Although I listen to modern music, traditional music really interests me too. I particularly enjoy mariachi music, which is based in very old traditional music. But the style of mariachi music most people recognize today emerged in the 19th century. There are many mariachi bands who perform using guitars, drums, and trumpets. You'll probably have seen their bright costumes and videos of their lively outdoor performances. When I listen to mariachi music, I feel a strong connection to the past. To me, this is the sound of Mexico.
So that was a track said by Miguel or Miguel from Mexico. He's a British citizen and he is talking about his country, his traditions, his cultural beliefs. Okay, and we have the questions now: A, B, C, D, E, and F. The best way to solve the listening activity is to read the notes very carefully before listening to the track. After that, you have to hold a pencil and then you have to listen carefully to the extract or to the recording. While you are listening, you are holding the pencil and you are trying to tick or to write the answer as notes. It is not important to write everything, not all details, just write notes, okay, about what the question or the answer might be. So let's answer them. Cultural beliefs in grandmother's song and Mexican traditions. Understanding cultural beliefs can help us to interpret, to understand, to uh, translate the stories differently. Miguel now has a viewpoint or point of view on Mexican culture. Now, what two backgrounds does Miguel say Mexicans come from? Mexicans have Spanish and North American background. They are already in North America or Central America, and we have Spanish colony or colonialism, which influenced their cultural traditions and architecture. And number two, what does Miguel mean when he says the cathedral takes his breath away? When your breath is taken away, it means you are amazed and you are very attracted to something. Okay? The cathedral is so beautiful that it leaves Miguel feeling overwhelmed and amazed. It shows his deep admiration to the country's culture and history. And what Mexicans usually do celebrate on 16th of September. They celebrate Independence Day on 16th of September, which marks the day the country became independent and free from Spain. Mexican celebrations with the flowers, parades, sports games, fireworks is full in the town, full in the country. Name three things Mexican do on 16th of September. They decorate buildings and the flowers. They hold parades and they have sports games and fireworks. Give me two instruments used in mariachi bands, guitar and trumpet. And what does Miguel mean when he uses, when I listen to mariachi music, I feel a strong connection to the past. The mariachi music helps Miguel feel connected to the Mexican heritage. Music lift your spirit and charge your soul. So mariachi for him is very important because it reminds him of all the traditions and the cultural beliefs or history of his country. Question now is very important. What is your opinion? When you read the story from culture different point of view, your thoughts and feelings about it may vary. I need you to discuss your reaction to the ideas of grandmother songs. Do you agree or you don't agree with? And you will need to choose language carefully when you are explaining, and you have to be balanced a little bit, or you have to explain your point of view and support it with evidence. When you read a story from cultural different to your own, it is natural that your thoughts and feelings might differ. That's because everyone has different cultural beliefs, and that shape how we react in a certain way or to certain events, characters, and ideas in history. We have something we are very convinced with, we agree and accept, but we have other things which we don't believe and we don't accept. It's a matter of cultural belief. In Grandmother's Song, however, the writer represents an emotional and heartfelt portrait of the granddaughter's grief at losing her grandmother. And we have deep relation and connection to the nation. And for some readers, this story may evoke or stimulate deep emotions such as sadness, empathy, or love. While others, however, especially those from different cultures, the feelings expressed in story might not be easily understood. They might react in a way that feels unfamiliar for them. I might say it is easy and promising as well. Your reaction to this story will depend on your own values and experiences. Example, if you have a strong family traditions or a close relation with your grandparents, you may feel a deep emotional connection to the story themes of love, loss, and remembrance. It means if you are good, if you have good familial bonds or families, and you believe in traditions and this values or traditions which pass through generation to another generation, then when you read the grandmother songs, you will accept it and you will love it as well. However, if you have not experienced such relationship, you don't believe in such things, you don't have that much uh, strong bonds or familial bonds, you might find the story more difficult to relate to, deficit, and not interesting. As a result, however, because I am in the middle and I have to be balanced, it is important to consider how the cultural beliefs of both the writer and the reader influence the interpretation of the story. And a very good way is to have an audience or readers who share the same values or same point of view with the writer. It will make difference. But remember that different cultural perspectives can help you to understand why people from various backgrounds react in distinct ways to the same story. When you understand the cultural beliefs and the traditions of some certain group, you will understand, of course, the whole story or anything related to that story. Now, if I might ask you to write the same, write 150 words personal response. Write your own personal response to grandmother's song and explain your views and opinions. This could include what you enjoy in the story, how you react to what happened in the story, what was the main point the writer was making about the story. I have a personal response to grandmother's song. Grandmother's Songs is a beautiful, emotional story that explores the theme of love, loss, and memory. I introduced the topic. One of the things I enjoyed most about the story is the way it describes the deep bond and familiar relationship between the granddaughters and the grandmother. The actions of this granddaughter, such as caring for her grandmother, spending the time together, show how much she values her and how much she do care for her. The ending of the story is both heartbreaking and comforting as well, positive and negative. While the grandmother's intense grief at the loss of the grandmothers is palpable, and the description of her sobbing and feelings of despair made me reflect on how powerful the connection between family members can be. However, the story ends with a sense of hope as the granddaughter feels that her grandmother's spirit is still there. She is presenting. She is now there. And she can carry her money forward. The main point the writer seems to be making is when loved ones pass away, when loved ones died, their love and their influence can continue to be part of us, and we can honor them through our memories. All the time remember them and talk about them. You will be honoring them. This message is to remind me of the importance of family connections and how we can continue to feel close to those we've lost. I did express the ideas clearly and I used appropriate language for the task, and I tried to listen to others in order to understand their views and to write what actually they are asking. That's the text. Those are my notes, okay? The teacher notes. That's the extract. That's the extract 7 and 8. I want to explain that the text or the convention of the text, the genre is a narrative story of extract 7 and 8, and it follows a grandmother's and the granddaughter's thoughts, their emotional journey, and it is written in third person to tell the story of love, loss, and the deep emotional bond between family members. Some features and conventions about the story. Character development, the main character, the grandmother and granddaughter. I'm analyzing the text. I'm trying to give features and conventions of the genre or of the text. Now the story shows the progression of the relationship as the granddaughter grows into an adulthood and later becomes a grandmother herself. The granddaughter goes from being caretaker, to experiencing deep grief after the grandmother's death, showing emotional growth. We have lots of imagery and symbolism. Examples. The text is rich in imagery with detailed descriptions like the fine silver hair, well-known feet, well-worn feet. Those symbolize grandmother's age and life experience. The mountain, however, is central symbol. It's very important. It represents the journey of the life and its strength to face a challenge and ultimate solitude of death. We have the theme of death and spiritual connection, the death of the grandmother, and the dream sequence in which the granddaughter sees her walking alone up to the mountain symbolize the inevitable journey of life to death. The granddaughter's experience feeling her grandmother's spirit after the death conveys the theme of spiritual continuity and the lasting bond between loved ones. Emotional tone. The tone is emotional. The story is one of love, grief, healing. The granddaughter's grief and intense, but she ultimately finds solace in the idea of the granddaughter's spirit that always is there. The structure. I have paragraph shape. I have two extracts, 7 and 8, and of course we have 6 extracts before. The first dealing with the grandmother, number 7, the grandmother when she was alive, and the second, extract 8, is the granddaughter's grief and the healing and the spiritual connection that follows. Simplified explanation for the story or of the story. The text is about a grandmother and a granddaughter who share a special bond. As the grandmother gets older, the granddaughter helps her with everyday tasks like cooking, washing her hair, and they also enjoyed walking together in the mountains. But one night, a granddaughter has a dream where her grandmother walks alone in the mountain. When her granddaughter wakes up, she finds that the grandmother passed away. The granddaughter now very sad, very weak, and very miss. She feels lost, alone, and a storm is raining, or like a storm raining inside her. But then the granddaughter hears her grandmother's voice, felt her presence. She told her to listen and remember. Listen well, listen well. My little one, listen well. Remember this or these phrases. She feels her grandmother's love and spirit, even though she's gone. But the granddaughter grows older and becomes a grandmother herself, and she continues to tell her own grandchildren about how their granddaughter or grandmother, spirit is always with them. In this wind, in the wind, in the trees, and in everywhere they go. I have powerful words and phrases. Frail, weak. Synonym is fragile. Antonym is strong. And we are using this word to create a sense of vulnerability and age. Well worn, which means worn out, to show signs of use. Synonym is weathered or worn. Antonym, it is new or pristine. Suggest, the effect is to suggest a lifetime of experience. Tremble, to shook with emotions of fear. It means shivered or quivered. And antonym is steady and calm. Calm, emphasize intense emotion or fear. Sobs, it's deep, uncontrollable. The idea or the meaning, the synonym is weeping or crying. The antonym is smiling and laughing. The effect, evoke deep sadness and loss, because we have two different meanings. The verb is immense. Immense is extremely large or great, huge, vast, while the antonym is small or insignificant. Highlights, the effect is to highlight the overwhelming nature of the feeling. We have the last two or three. Cradle, it's to hold something gently and protectively, like a rock or cuddle. And the antonym is drop or release, and that conveys care, comfort, and nurturing love. Spirit or spirit, the essence of the soul of the person. Antonym, body, flesh, something you can touch. Synonym, soul, essence, something intangible or you cannot touch. Connects with the theme of life after death. Well-being, a state of happiness and good health. It means healthy, and the opposite is sickness or misery. And that symbolizes the healing process and the emotional peace. If I might ask you to write a writing task, related one, I might ask you to write a descriptive story, and this is very important to your quiz. Write a descriptive story which or where an important person in your life, family member, friend, or etc., contribute in your life. In your story, describe how the person has cared for you and the emotional bond you share. Include part where they express feelings and loss and how this person's spirit continues to influence your life. Example, grandmother was always there for me. She had a kind smile, and her hands were soft and warm. Every morning she would she would make me breakfast. She would make me breakfast and tell me stories from the childhood. I loved her so much, and I loved to sit with her lap or on her lap, feeling warmth and embrace. I used some phrases from the text. But one day, when I went to visit her, she was gone. She's dead. If they, if deep, if a deep emptiness inside me, as though a part of my heart was missing. I cried, not knowing how to live without her. So now we have the problem. How to solve it? But then I remembered what she used to say. Whenever you need me, just close your eyes. I will be there. I did. As she said, I closed my eyes. I felt her spirit surrounding me. Like a warm breeze, I knew she was there with me. She's still with me. In the wind, in the trees, in the birds. And every time I needed comfort, I could feel her love guiding me. Remember that I used the descriptive words to explain their appearance. I included the important person in my life like the grandmother. I expressed how I felt when this person was no longer around. I described myself when she died. I include a part where I feel connected to the nature or to students after they are gone. I use powerful words and powerful phrases: spirit, love, comfort. I'd like to thank you so much for having me today. Remember that the homework is the workbook 2.4, Climbing the Mountains. You have focus, activity. You are just going to read and try to give evidence or to write the effect of some implicit and explicit meaning. And then you have the practice. You have to put the sensory details or the images according to sound, touch, taste, found of course in this paragraph. And then we have the challenge questions, which is this story is about how close familial bonds and how they are all connected. In your notebook, explain what statements means using quotations from the paragraph. It is like number 5, tell me what the meaning of close familiar and how they are connected. I'd like to thank you for having me. This is Mr. Abdulwahab Jamal, saluting everybody. Have a good night, study well, and see you inshallah next session in 2.5, a new session celebrating grandparents. Okay? It is non-fiction. It is non-fiction.